Hey guys, Youngblood with you, and in today's Starmap journey, we're stopping off in Tayac to talk about a system that had some initial promise, but ultimately now isn't really known for much. Now, Tayac was initially discovered back in 2524 during the eastern expansion from the Terran jump point, and it's a relatively small system with only 3 planets and an asteroid belt, but the initial impression was that this could be a commercial system, with the innermost planet actually being a good terraforming candidate. So that sounds pretty promising, right? An innermost planet actually being capable of terraformation? We'll have to get back to that. Because this system wasn't initially Tayac. Its initial name was 368A. And 368A just sat there for a long time because the human race was finding more systems than they were able to terraform. So it ended up creating this big backlog of just systems that were piling up, waiting for their turn to be terraformed. From there, once the first planet was actually chosen to be terraformed, boom! War with the Teveran, and all non-essential projects ended up being cancelled, which included the terraformation of Tayac 1, or 368A.01M. Now, after the war and Messer's rise to Imperator, 368A was turned into a military system, basically meaning that the system and all its access points were completely blocked by the Navy, specifically blockading the jump points leading into the system. Now, Messer, being Messer, decided that he didn't really want interspecies wars to rage for as long as they did, like the one that we had with the Teveran. And as such, he decided to authorize some testing and development of doomsday-type devices. And you remember that promising first planet that was on its way to being terraformed? Yeah, it was now actually declared the testing ground for weapons of mass destruction, and it was primarily done by a doctor named Tayac, who decided that you could probably turn terraforming technology evil and try and reverse the process. So over and over again, the project codenamed Vespa built a planet and stripped a planet, and built and destroyed, and just rinsed and repeat. And the ultimate end result of all this was that the planet was now too unstable to be terraformed for permanent residence. Nice work, guys. And to top all of that off, there's no practicality in the weaponization of terraforming. It's big, it takes a lot of time to set up, it takes a lot of time to operate, and there's no good way to position and defend for an extremely long period of time over an enemy's planet while they're engaging you, because they're not going to just watch and let this happen. So, Tayac is now a system that's named after a scientist who came up with a terrible idea and ruined a planet. And to top all that off, after the Messer regime failed, that information ended up coming out. It just goes blown out into the universe, and that really ended up putting a pretty good strain on our newly formed relationship with the xi'an. Now, the good news is that the new government actually played it pretty smart, giving the xi'an all the information from Project Vespa and swore up and down that the technology would never be looked into again. So to try and actually make things a little bit better, Imperator Marshal Leon suggested that after all this war and distrust, that there become this huge repository of knowledge for all species to share, which ended up becoming known as the Ark. Now, it's a safe place for all species to come, to share information, to learn, and just meet up and do diplomacy. And the Ark can now be found at Tayac 1 to symbolize how you can recover from a terrible past and do great things in the future together. Now, since the planets here are completely inhabitable, the Ark is the main source of activity in this system, meaning that there's also going to be businesses and services laid out around the Ark to kind of support those that are coming to that interspecies library. The Ark is also a big mobile device, and it's rumored that to celebrate its 200th birthday in the year 3000, that the Ark may end up start moving and heading into alien space, because it is for everybody, so it shouldn't necessarily just be sitting in human-occupied space. Now, nothing is firm with that yet, but it is worth noting. And also worth noting is that since the Ark is designed for all species, the UEE doesn't have jurisdiction around the Ark, which means that it could be a good place for smuggling or doing illegal trading, but it could also mean that you could have different governments watching you as well. Now, Tayac 2 is a gigantic gas giant with some very impressive rings around the planet that are supposed to be incredibly dense, basically creating a highly colored planet with some very dark rings, making for a nice contrast. Pretty to see. Tayac 3 is known as Shepherd, and it's orbiting alarmingly close to an asteroid belt, but its nickname of Shepherd is there because it acts like a sheepdog, kind of keeping the asteroids in place, and not letting them head out into the inner parts of the system. Now, it was probably once part of that asteroid belt before kind of coalescing into its current state, but we're not positive on that. But speaking of that asteroid belt, there is one here, but it doesn't have much in the way of resources, so it's not a real good mining location. What it does have, though, is an orbiting piece of art that was commissioned to celebrate the 100th birthday of the Ark, and it was done by a human and xi'an artist along with a Banu fabrication team who all lived together for a decade to complete it. Now, what that's going to end up looking like, I have no idea, but I guess we can go there and find out. So that's pretty much it for Tayac, and frankly, there isn't a whole lot to say about it. You know, like, who wants to come here? I mean, tourists, really, or those that are needing to do research at a library. Because there aren't resources, there aren't economies, which to me says there's not mining, there's not trading, which probably means there's not much piracy, which means that there's not much bounty hunting. The system is old, so exploration is probably going to be pretty limited. I mean, frankly, the only real benefits I see in this system for players would be for those that are wanting to maybe set up a merchantman or some other mobile trade market to kind of conduct business with alien partners. You know, maybe those of you with Starfarers could fill up at Tayac 2 and come and refuel those that are about to head home after visiting the Ark. And maybe those of you with Crucibles can kind of hang out by the Ark and fix up tourists who got in trouble on their way here. Bottom line is, you can probably find a way to make money in this system, but there's going to be a lot of different locations that are going to be better options for that. So that's it for this video. If you have questions about Tayac, please let me know. Otherwise, as always, stay tuned for a whole lot more content. I'll talk to you guys soon. Have a wonderful day. Take care.